pair of strangers, a doctor and a photographer, wake up in a grimy underground bathroom, each chained by his ankle to a drain pipe. Also in said bathroom are a dead body and two rusty hacksaws, too dull to cut through their shackles, but sharp enough to cut through other things. They soon discover that they are captives of the Jigsaw killer, whose calling card entails intricate scenarios that force the victims to make a choice, to maim themselves or even kill someone else to stay alive. Before there was the Saw franchise, there was just Saw, a relatively low-budget thriller from a pair of Australian horror kids who wanted to make a good impression. Strapped for cash but no shortage of imagination, the duo of actor-screenwriter Lee Whannell and director James Wan whipped up a short film scenario that could take place in a single room. The calling card was well received enough to warrant a small budget, approximately $1 million, with Evolution Picture creating a genre arm called Twisted Pictures, specifically to produce the feature. The movie, shot in a mere 18 days, exploded at the box office in October 2004 to become one of the most profitable horror features of all time, much to the surprise of its participants and creators. While it is great fun to detail the multitude of quibbles and logistical flaws that show up in the final product, there's no denying that Saw sparked the imagination of a hungry horror landscape littered with J-horror remakes and scream pretenders. Examining the franchise as a whole, it's fascinating to see where it all began. With a fierce strength of on-screen conviction, a motionless body on the floor, and two chained men in a filthy, neglected bathroom, staring at each other in confusion and distrust. 20 years ago, the October tradition began. It's not October yet, but we're going to be celebrating it a little bit in advance. We've got an awesome panel to chat about this groundbreaking series. Let's bring everybody in and let's say hello to Katie McLean Hainsworth.
Hello.
Jason Kaufman.
Howdy.
Nicola McCafferty.
Delighted to be here.
And Daniel Millhouse.
Let's play a game. Oh, that was terrible.
And we're going to be chatting about Saw from 2004, celebrating its 20th anniversary. And along the way, we'll be chatting about all those sequels. We're talking 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, all the way up to Saw X, which came out last year. Thank you for coming on the show, everybody, and welcome. Katie and Nicola fought to be on this panel. It was like I'm like, you're doing a bunch of shows this year. You don't have to. And they're like, no, I must do Saw. And I was like, yeah. Okay. And Katie slogged her way through all 10 with being sick. So I'm so glad to have you here. Let's talk about our origin stories of how we came to Saw 2004 for the first time. Katie, why don't we kick things off with you?
This is one of the rare ones where I begged to be on this panel, but I have not been with Saw since Saw was. So I saw it late. I didn't see it in the theater. I heard a lot about it. I heard it was torture porn. I heard it was this and that. And I thought, I don't really need it. And then caught it on video a few years later and freaked out and was like, and now I need all of it right now. So that's my origin story.
Awesome. Jason.
I saw the first one shortly after it first came out, and for whatever reason, it didn't do anything for me at the time. So then I didn't watch anymore until 5. And when 5 came out, AMC did a thing where they showed 1 through 4 and then 5 at midnight. So I got caught all at once and then watched Saw 5 at midnight.
But then you were with them for the rest. I know every time this one's come out, you've been like, yep, I was there.
Yeah, at least partially out of obligation at this point.
I feel you.
Yeah.
Nicola.
Yeah, I was unfortunately way too young when the first movie came out to have been allowed
That's
to
not
see it.
unfortunate at all. That's just life.
That's a theme.
Yeah, but so I didn't actually see any of them, I think, until college. So probably a decade after it came out. I watched the first one. I also was like, okay, that was a movie. I had heard a lot about them prior to that. I remember in high school having conversations with a friend of mine about the bear trap, but the reverse bear trap. But I really didn't have my come to Saw moment until the pandemic, when they were all streaming and everybody was watching all of them. And I think I watched them all at least 3 times. I became fascinated with like trying to piece together the temporality and the kind of moral universe that Jigsaw has set up. And yeah, now here we are.
And Daniel.
I also was too young for the first movie. So I think I saw the first one the first movie I saw was in 2011. And I remember it was Saw 3 was the first movie I saw. It was my college roommate and another friend and I, he owned the DVD and he's like, I've never seen it. And we put it in and we watched it. And it was like that bonding experience between the three of us is why I ended up watching the rest of them. But I have never seen them in the correct order, so I'm even more confused. Like I think I went from Saw 3 to Saw 6 to 1, and then I went to I think it was 5, 7, 4, 2,
You're
and
making
then I saw
my head hurt right now.
yeah. So even when I was like doing all the recaps, I tried watching them in order even this time, and I was like, I just couldn't. There's too many of them.
Yeah.
So I still haven't seen Spiral yet or Saw 10.
Okay.
But I think I've seen them. I might not even have seen all of them.
Well, I guess you'll find out today.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As we they're like, nope, I don't know who Detective Hoffman is, so never mind.
But then I have also the ones I have seen. I know I have also seen them at least 3 times. And, I used to think I had a strong stomach because I could sit through these movies while I ate food. And then all of a sudden, I think I was doing a marathon of them at one point. And I got like 4 movies in. And now I'm like, wow, I can't eat food when I watch.
Drilled that right out of you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I actually did see the first one in the theater because I'm old, and 2004, and there wasn't a lot of hoopla about it. In fact, I think I saw it, Katie, surprisingly enough, as a double feature with Shaun of the Dead.
Oh, fantastic.
I think I saw Shaun of the Dead, and then I rolled into Saw. I wasn't blown away by it. I'd also had the end spoiled for me because it was the early days of message boards, and some idiot had put in the title, as the title of the message, the guy on the floor, the dead guy on the floor is the killer. And that didn't mean anything to me until I'm sitting there and like, oh, there's a dead guy on the floor. He's probably the killer.
Oh,
Great.
That sucks.
Well, we were talking backstage. There were a lot of things about the first one that I was kind of like, I don't know. But then the series, I think it's one of those that actually gets better as it gets more involved. And they have the opportunity to kind of like go back and fill in some of the things that didn't make sense. They like, hey, that doesn't make sense. Well, let's make it make sense with, an assistant or a alternate timeline. That's what I admire the most about the series itself. I don't think there's any one film. I was talking about this with another panel, but in the Friday the 13th series, let's say, you can always go, I like that one. And I like that one. And I don't like that one. Saw is kind of like it's a whole, until we get to Jigsaw, Spiral, and Saw X, they aren't really standalone. They're all part of this story, that arc. That's one of the things I've just grown to appreciate. I can't say I love any one Saw movie, but I really admire what this franchise became. Let's begin at the beginning with Saw 2004, and we wake up in a bathroom with Lee Whannell's character Adam and Carrie Elwes' character, Dr. Gordon. And they are both chained to pipes. There's a dead guy on the floor, and there's a saw. And the simplicity of that actually is really what plays. And we already kind of start setting up, there's what happens in the trap, and there's what's going on outside. Anyway, I'd like to kind of kick things off with their initial thoughts about Saw 2004.
Well, I'll say that when I first watched it, I was like, what is going on and why are they all over the place? I'm someone who really enjoys the gotcha moments of something. If you can get me, I'm usually ahead of you. So if you can get me, I really, really will appreciate it. I learned through watching Saw that just chill out, just be patient, just let it happen the way they're going to let it happen. Like I didn't trust it. I didn't trust that it was going to wrap up in a way that I found satisfying. And I thought everything's all over the place. So I think it's for being low budget and untested filmmakers, they really knocked it out of the park. And the final shot with the green light over his head and the game over and the door closing is like chilling and terrifying. And I just think it was they made every right choice along the way. Some things are overblown, some things are a little ridiculous, some things they ask you too much of you to believe, but it's always the right choice. And you don't know that until it's over, which is really, really satisfying to me.
Yeah, you brought up a good point. Does anybody want to talk about kind of the origin with James Wan and Lee Whannell?
Didn't they
Like
make
a history lesson?
Yeah, like they made a short film of it first, and then
And the short is excellent. I don't
I
know if
haven't seen
anyone.
it. I couldn't find it.
One of the most hilarious things about the short is that Billy the Puppet's wearing a hat. As any true Saw head will know. But yeah, I think it's amazing as a short film. I think just a testament to that they really like had a fully realized idea.
Yeah.
Because that was kind of the that they were shopping that around to get funding, to get producers.
Well, and the idea that like this becomes a franchise, like they weren't anticipating that, you know, like this was supposed to be a standalone, you know, calling card, you know, like how to announce ourselves. It was made for around $1 million. And, you know, we had some decent names. We had Danny Glover. We had
Carrie
Elwes. And so some of the money was going there for sure. So again, it was a very small affair, which is why they were thinking contained space.
No exterior shots, right? None at all in this movie. It's all inside, even when they're in a car.
Yeah, I like what they're doing, but I agree with you, Katie. I think that it is a young filmmaker trying to cover up his budget. There's a lot of whirling cameras and editing and loud music. And it's like, you know, how can I bombard you so that you don't have to think about this too hard?
Yeah, it's a smart choice.
Yeah.
I've seen it. I've seen the first one, 3 times now. And the first time I was like, and then the second time I liked it more. And I like it a lot more now than I did when it first came out. I don't know what it was about it when it was first released. I know I wasn't crazy about the music for sure. It's just that style just really kind of got grated on my nerves.
Yeah.
But now looking back at it, like it's easier to appreciate like what it was doing. It was interesting to enough people to turn it into this huge thing. Instead of just like, oh, that's the one with the guy on the floor, which is kind of how I thought about it for a long time.
Daniel?
I was going to say, I wonder, Jason, if that's like kind of the magic of the Saw franchise to me as well. Like Aaron said, in terms of, I think because they did so much world building, it's like I enjoy the first movie better because they created a universe out of something that was never supposed to exist. And I kind of find that connective tissue really kind of exciting and applaudable that they keep finding something out of this, even though they've told a complete story in almost every movie.
Yeah.
Except for like the last 2. I think those go directly back to back or something.
Well, I mean, once you get to 4 through 7, like that is very much cliffhanger.
Yeah.
You know, like you have to show up for the next one, which got a little exhausting for me around like 6. I was like, I'm so done, but I kept showing up. Like you said, Jason, I had an obligation. I'm like, well, I have to ride this one all the way out to the end, which is funny because I don't even like TV. Like the thing I like about movies is that it's a standalone story. This became TV by the end. I was like, oh my God, this is why I don't do TV, because I have to keep showing up on Monday night.
It's so funny you say that because I remember when I was listening to everyone's introductions, I was thinking, wow, this kind of did like the British TV style of writing.
Yeah. But they also introduced a villain unlike any other, and I say villain because I don't know. Jigsaw's motivation and his modus operandi is not like anything I think that we've ever seen before. And so all kudos to James Wan and Lee Whannell for creating something so complicated. And my issue with the remainder of the series post 3 is that they never get anybody who lives up to that in The Apprentices, and it's boring. So like I spend time wrestling with whether or not what he's doing is good. And that's ridiculous. But
I think that's what's so fascinating to me about the Saw movies and watching them all together is that there is this, he obviously has a fully realized idea of what it is that he is doing. Like, he's got a whole philosophy worked out. I think, like, as an audience, it's very interesting to try to put that together, because, like, essentially it boils down to, like, you're not appreciating life. In whatever form that may take. And that could be like you struggle with addiction, or it could be like you're, you know, a healthcare conglomerate and like stripping people of basic access to healthcare. Yeah. So the range of possibility of what can be encompassed under not enjoying, not appreciating your life is fascinating. But I completely agree that Hoffman in particular as a villain just like really does not do the same kind of fascinating moral work that John Kramer does.
Yeah.
Danny Glover is kind of our, you know, big name in the first one, not to disparage Mr. Glover, but you know, I feel like what are you doing in this movie?
It's really bad. He doesn't have a ton to work with, but boy, that when he's watching Zepp in somebody else's house, being like, "What are you doing there, little man?" I'm like, not only is this monologue insane, call the fucking police. Like, there's somebody in that guy's house. I don't care if you think he's Jigsaw. Like, there's the people are in danger in there. It's so ridiculous.
Well, and Carrie Elwes and Lee Wanell, for that matter. Yeah. I don't think anybody's not turning in like Oscar-worthy work, except for Tobin Bell, who's, you know, very
brilliant,
very small.
And Carrie Elwes comes back 6 years later and still doesn't have a dialect coach. It's ridiculous.
So I was saying backstage that I just saw the musical adaptation, the musical parody of Saw, which only treats the first Saw movie. But the actor playing Dr. Gordon is egregiously slipping out of an English accent, like to the point. I mean, Carrie Elwes is too, but like to the point of absurdity through the entire, and it was fabulous.
When we get to Diana, I just lose it every time.
Well, I mean, Adam slipping into his American accent, I'm like, buddy, come on. And I'm like, why couldn't Adam just been an Australian photographer?
Why couldn't Carrie Elwes just be British? I don't understand why that ever happened.
Because it's in Canada, so
it's so ridiculous.
Well, it is fascinating too that these are like not American filmmakers, but it becomes such a quintessentially kind of American franchise about, you know, post 2008, about the healthcare crisis, about like the war on terror, but
corruption.
Like kind of by accident. Yeah.
Like as a teacher, Saw has been so prominent in my whole life, essentially, 20 years we said. And I just assumed my students who are 18 out of high school may have seen a movie or two, but when Saw 10 came out last year, every single student in all of my classes saw it and loved it. And I was like, have you even seen the other ones? They're like, no.
So it wasn't 10 to them, it was X.
Yeah. That's right.
Lee Wanell does have a beautiful moment when he's listening to that tape and, you know, Kramer gets up out of focus in the background and he just does the slow turn with it. That is all of us doing the slow turn. Yep. What the fuck is going on here? He gets that right. So I forgive him a lot for his other really, really bad acting in that movie.
Well, and we talked also backstage about the makeup on Carrie Elwes, because that was like between Carrie Elwes's performance and the makeup, I'm just like, I walked out of the first one just being like, what is going on?
He is bleeding out 5 minutes into the movie. Nothing has happened to him yet, and he's getting paler and paler.
But by the end, he's like, they got out the clown white.
Yes.
Like, dude, come on.
It's bad.
And he just really doesn't respond well to fluorescent lights.
I guess
that's what it is. That's what it is. One argument against fluorescent light right there. The other thing, they get better with the internal logic as the series goes on. But I felt like, you know, I was constantly going, and then later, of course, you keep thinking, like on subsequent viewings, Zepp's terrorizing of the Gordon family. I'm like, if he's doing this under duress, like, why is he pushing so hard? It's not like Jigsaw's watching his performance and grading him. You know, he just, it's
because he's poisoned and he's losing his mind.
It's clearly there's a misdirection so that we think that he's Jigsaw. I'm just kind of like, dude, like, calm down a little.
But also the script is so brilliant because when he turns and says, I can't help you, like he's saying something totally different than what we're hearing. And I just
help you.
Really great. Yeah.
I think you got to use that soundbite. What did you say? How brilliant the script is?
Well, yeah, right. No, but it's masterful in its misdirection.
Yes.
The
Yeah.
lines aren't great. People don't talk like that, but it's really well constructed, I should
Yes.
say.
Yeah.
Brilliantly constructed.
I think masterful is right. I think they invented like a new meaning for editing across all of these. Like they're movies about time in some way, and kind of like a meditation on what editing and flashbacks can do for cinema. I always have to have the most galaxy brain. There are movies about movies kind of thing, but I think that the flashback structure is fascinating.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah. And I mean, it all kind of cascades down at the end, and you're like, it was there in front of us the whole time.
And then they're going to take that idea and they're going to turn it upside down in Saw 2 to misdirect the people who are now like, okay, well, I'm looking for it. I'm going to figure this out. And then they take what they did before and they're like, oh, no, we're not doing that again. This is something else.
So here's a question for the panel, because this was something that has on subsequent viewings, because Jigsaw is very much about like, how much blood are you willing to shed in order to stay alive? Like that's kind of the code throughout until we get to 6 when it gets a little weird. What do we think that guy who ends up in Amanda's trap, that she has to like dig the key out? I'm
what was that guy supposed to do? Yeah.
Like he must have failed another trap at some point and like, okay, well, now you get to end up here.
That's what Saw 11's about.
That guy.
Spoiler.
He was another accomplice.
Yeah.
Apprentice.
A failed apprentice.
Yep, there you go. And
I had that thought this morning. Like, hey, what did that guy do?
Yeah, he didn't do anything. He just got to lay there because mostly it's about like how you hurt yourself.
Interesting, makes sense.
Well, it didn't say how much blood are you. It didn't say whose blood you're willing to shed. How much blood are you willing to shed?
Yeah. But it does kind of run counter to his normal thing. Because we don't know anything about what this person has done to make him be deserving of.
Right. And they don't ever go back and fix that, do they? And they just show us Dr. Gordon sewing the key into him, right? But they don't know why.
And there's no way for him to get out of that, which is not.
That's antithetical.
Yeah.
The first one also has the shotgun trap, which isn't really anything but you get shot with 4 shotguns and die. Like, you don't have much of a chance.
Shouldn't have walked in there, pal.
No.
Boy, I'm not worried about the guy what was his story. I was more thinking, this makes me feel terrible. I was thinking, that's the trap I want. I just want to wake up and then have to cut someone open and get a key rather than walk through barbed wire.
Choose all my traps. I don't understand the trap with the numbers on the wall. I'll confess, I'll just say it right now since we're going to talk about the whole series. Most of the traps, I don't understand. I don't understand what they're supposed to do or how they get out of it or why they're there. But mostly, I don't care.
Right. Yeah. If it's interesting. The last thing that in the first one that I kind of called the logic police was, Adam wakes up in that bathtub.
Yeah.
And the key goes down the drain. And I was kind of like, well, wait a minute. Like he woke up. You can't blame that one on him.
I think Amanda sets him up to fail.
That's what I was going to bring up.
Because we don't know that until another movie. But I also think it's a nice little bit of tragedy. Like we don't find out the disappointment of him not being able to get out of his chain until the very end. Right. Whereas in other traps and other stories, we're just like, oh, so they could never get out of it? Well, we have to wait for them to get out of it or not get out of it. This at least delays that moment of knowledge that we get that like, oh, that does suck for Adam that he could never get out of that trap.
It was Amanda's, first day on the job, and she's like going,
yeah,
watch this.
Yeah.
No, that's okay. Thank you. That answers that question.
That's how I always understood it as well. And like why John Kramer also, I think, takes him as a apprentice. Why am I talking about this as if this is real life? We got to understand the psychology of these human beings.
I do, though.
Well, okay. So talk about the psychology. Like John Kramer puts himself to sleep in the middle of the room. I'm kind of like, why wouldn't you put one of your apprentices there so that you can actually observe?
He doesn't trust them yet.
Yeah, I guess. Like I wouldn't know if I'd trust myself
Zepp
to be
is
unconscious
watching.
in the middle of it.
Zepp is watching.
But isn't he?
So there may be he has instructions to do something. Who knows? But Zepp is watching while he's out, and Kramer wakes up at least at the point of the cigarette to shock Adam, after he fake dies, right?
Okay.
So there's still a stretch of time where he is just breathing really, really shallowly, I guess, but not unconscious.
So he's obsessed with control. And I think like the way that plays out across the franchise is different. But for the first one, I think it makes sense. I know it's not like actually the first one that he's done, but in universe, like for the first one for us to encounter, to have him be in the room, I think does make sense for his psychology.
Well, and then things shift quite a bit when we get into Saw 2, like the world opens up quite a bit. Saw 2 really does feel like a big leap forward. It was an existing script by Darren Lynn Bousman, who went on to direct it. And they said, hey, we can kind of take that concept and fold it into what we've got already from our Saw from the first one. And it features a bigger scope and some more elaborate traps. And it starts introducing Amanda as a real character. What are people's thoughts on Saw 2?
This is the one where I loved it, but I don't understand most of the traps. I get really frustrated with Obi's trap every time because I'm like, how is he supposed to get up? Is it just because he goes for the other? I don't get it. But I love the flow of the movie and I love the twist.
Yeah, for me, Saw 2 is up there as far as my favorites go. I think after watching the first one, I was a bit on the fence. And then I didn't rewatch the first one when I started my whole Saw marathon. But after watching the second one, I was like, okay, I'm definitely in. There's a lot of interesting stuff happening here. The Wahlberg of it all, I could live without.
This is the one I know I have no memory of the second one. I know I've seen it. Is that the one where the son
it's
is
in the house?
Thing
yeah,
at the end?
He's in the safe.
He's
in a safe
said
place.
Wahlberg. I was like, okay, that's that one.
Yeah.
The only thing I think about when I think of Saw 2 is it the time period or is it the Saw movies that started all films having that like green filter around it?
I'd say yes, and I think that, David Armstrong was our director of photography, and I don't know that he originated that green look, but it certainly became prevalent throughout the series.
I don't even mean the series. I think a lot of any movie that tried to replicate
right, yeah.
style is all that too, yeah.
Yeah, it definitely became a calling card of like what falls under the torture porn umbrella, making everyone look sickly and tortured.
Well,
Pale
and
under fluorescent lights.
In 2005, I mean, this Saw 2 is when things step up. The first one's actually, I mean, it's not super gory. They didn't have a ton of money to spend on special effects. And so 2, it's kind of like, okay, we can start leaning into this a little bit more. And 2005 is also when Hostel came out. And I feel like that's when it got labeled retroactively as, part of the torture porn movement. Jason, thoughts on Saw 2?
2 is my favorite in a walk. I just feel like it is like a huge step up from the first one. And the twist works really, really well. So I feel like it's kind of the one time, like in one of the movies, like self-contained, like that twist works. Like, because all the other ones, you have to have seen at least 2 of the other movies for any of the like, you thought it was like this, but really it was like this thing to work. But in 2, like everything is there. Like you can, I feel like 2 is kind of the last one that you could show somebody completely by itself and it's self-contained and like, oh, that's a whole story. You don't need to have seen 1 necessarily. Like you just have to know there's this guy, and then everything else is like in place.
Right, and the stuff you do need to know, they fill you in on. Like they talk about who Amanda is and bring her back in.
Previously on Saw, yeah.
And I don't want to give shorter shrift to 2, but 3. I feel like kind of rounds things out because it really does bring Amanda's story to the front. And I remember watching Saw 3 in the theater because things really ramp up gore-wise for 3. And I remember watching it and Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the beginning, the prequel. Like that was a double feature. And I'm just like, I start off watching Godzilla movies. How the hell did I end up here in this theater watching this? But I also just remember watching 3 and getting really angry on behalf of the audience going, they can't win these traps. Like this is purely gore for gore's sake. And what the hell? We've completely descended. Humanity is lost. And then we come to the end and I'm like, oh, shoot, you had a point. Okay, well played, well played.
That's a hallmark of the series when it's working.
I feel like Amanda goes through the most tests.
Yeah. She needs them. I
was
guess.
gonna say, she's
Just-
working some
Just
stuff out.
doesn't get it.
Right. She has perverted the philosophy. Her understanding of, what should be happening in the trap is fundamentally different from John Kramer's. And so she deserves what's
Which is why I like X a lot,
Yeah,
because
yeah.
she gets some redemption there, and I think it's well deserved and earned.
Me too. I mean, I just always am wishing that Amanda would have been around
Yeah.
for longer, because the dynamic between John Kramer and Amanda
It's
is
terrific.
so much more interesting than anything Hoffman ever did.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, Saw 3 is my least favorite of the Saw.
Yeah, okay.
Not my least favorite. I like the three movie. I love watching the three movies as a whole, and if I
Yes.
feel the urge to watch Saw, I will almost assuredly follow it up with 2 and 3 and stop there. I love how it's all a piece, and again the twist got me, that they were married and that they it's a little clunkier than the previous scripts, but I got there. I like 3. I don't like the traps in 3. I find myself like waiting for them to be over. I don't feel
Yeah.
emotionally connected to anyone in those traps.
It just feels like we spend I can't remember the husband's name, but we spend so
Jeff.
long. Yes,
Yeah,
we
Jeff.
spend so long watching Jeff kind of like wander around hallways.
Flounder. Yeah.
And just flounder. He is really not picking up what Jigsaw's
Like
going
by the
down,
third trap, you should know how this works. You
Yeah.
have to move faster than this. So we're
which I
waiting.
find exhausting.
Yeah, and it's the longest. I think it's the longest one.
Outside of
Yeah,
Saw
I
X.
think it's-
The home video version is just a little under 2 hours. So by that point, it was by far the longest. It's probably actually it's not my least favorite, but it's down there, but it does have my favorite trap.
Daniel, any thoughts on 3?
No, I'm like you. I think it really, even though that was the first one I saw, 3 or 4 was the first.
It's a great entry point.
I remember I think it was that one, because I remember being so disappointed that, wait, you couldn't beat these things? And I thought that was the point of all the other Saw movies. And then I was like, ugh, why would I want to watch, like you, Aaron, were saying, oh my gosh, is this the end? It was like too dark to just like torture people.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I did like that twist. That twist got me. And I was like, oh, she messed up.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's what I do like about it, is that I think I like 3 as informed by 1 and 2.
Yeah.
Yeah. On its own, there's a lot of flaws. It's a little, it wallows a bit.
Gives you too much time to think about what's going on.
I do like the traps a lot, just in terms of like everything has ramped up.
Yeah.
And so now knowing the context, I mean, I can see Amanda, in the background going, well, what if we, like if she's like over John Kramer's shoulder. Also, let's just talk about John Kramer as the amazing architect and engineer that he is,
Yeah.
because that's another one where you go, dude, you have so much time on your hands
And money.
To be fair, I doubt anything is sanitary, so he might just be going to junkyard.
Yeah, but it's just like so much stuff.
When I saw the Saw musical, my friend and I were talking about like whether or not these properties look like this when he gets them, or he's doing a little bit of decoration.
Production design.
And I do think he's like going in and like adding a little bit of blood splatter for effect. But my question is, I mean, I think something that I think these also seem to meditate on is like the collapse of like industrial America. Like there's all these kind of abandoned warehouses. Like
Yeah.
he's not, he doesn't own any of these properties. So
Right.
he's not like, how much is he really spending? All the metal looks like scrap metal. Like it's a function of like urban and industrial decay more so than capital.
He's also getting like a lot of poison and illegal substances,
Yep.
and somehow I'm guessing that costs money to get those in and not be traced.
I
think
love
he
the
actually
idea that
does
he owns all the buildings and the cops still can't figure out
Yeah, I think
what warehouses.
I think in one of them at least, like it's pointed, like it's underlined that he actually does own some of the properties because he's designing the traps like inside them.
Right.
But I always like just pretend, because everything is so elaborate, that he has like a whole like production design crew that he's hired.
Yeah. Right.
Those guys are going in there before and setting it up, and like, oh god, it's a Kramer guy again. Like,
That's like Star Wars, where it's like they just don't even realize what they're making.
yeah.
They're just like, oh, this
Not
guy's
my
Building a
problem.
Death Star? Okay.
Text cash.
And this was the final script. Saw 1, 2, and 3. Leo Whannell was our primary screenwriter for all of those. And then after 3, the torch gets passed to Patrick Melton and Marcus Dunstan. And they pretty much came in with an arc that went from 4 to 7. Even though the series could have ended at the end of each one, they were careful to string things along. And they had thought it out far enough that you could stretch it out over 4 movies. Now, I've always said that, like, I think there's about a movie and a half's worth of plot between those 4 movies.
If that.
And I find myself actually more invested in the police procedural, the cat and mouse between Agent Strom and Detective Hoffman. Every time we go to the traps, I'm like, okay, fine. I guess we'll deal with these folks, scream and yell and not do it in time. Again, I think this is a very smart series, and I give it a lot of credit for that because it thinks its way forward and it thinks its way back. I remember when Saw 4 happened, because 3 is so final. 3 is so like that guy is dead.
Yeah.
And then just to make it for part 4, they're like, here, we're going to completely autopsy the shit out of this guy. So he's really, 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 really dead. And then they make a movie. Moving ahead to Saw 4, what are people's thoughts about kind of like this next chapter in the Saw franchise?
What is the main plot?
What is it? It's really...
This is where now they blur together because I've seen them out of order. What's this one?
Is Hoffman's arc.
Right. This is where we're introducing, we're threading things forward.
Is this the one with Donnie Wahlberg on ice?
That's 3.
Okay.
You see him in 3, but this is not the end of him.
3 and 4 take place at the same time.
Right.
Yeah,
and that's the thing. It's a paraquel.
Yeah.
I get very bored with this was all happening simultaneously. Like I did that in 3. I got it. It was great. And now I'm just like, so what? Who cares that this was all happening at the same time? Yeah. I find Costas Mandylor and Scott Patterson so boring. I don't understand how you can think you can replace Tobin Bell with the 2 of the most boring one-note actors on the planet. That Game Over, the first Game Over of Costas Mandylor, I'm like, are you serious? How dare you? Like, what is this? I slogged through 4 through 6. And which one is 7? Is that the insurance one?
No, 7.
6 is insurance. 7 is the 3D.
Yeah, 3D, where it's the guy who's written the memoir.
Yeah. I don't mind that one. I like the storyline. I watched it again and I was like, oh, I do like this one. And then I got online and it was like, this is the worst one. I was like, oh, okay. I'm sorry. I thought I kind of liked it. It has one of my favorite moments in the series, which is the public trap where we have Brad and Ryan and the girl hanging overhead. And when they reveal the girl, Ryan looks up and goes, are you okay?
Yeah, that's when suddenly the Jigsaw script, he's very misogynistic out of nowhere. All of a sudden he's women are duplicitous and manipulative and toxic, by the way. And I've thought
you should kill her.
Yeah.
Well, I'm like,
but that's there in 5. I think my other favorite moment is when they flash. They're digging into Hoffman's backstory and they flash the headline that says, boyfriend killed detective's sister.
Yes.
And I was like, what is that headline? Not only is it written really badly, like whose boyfriend, the detectives or the sisters? But what is this story about? Is it about the detective? We appreciate that you're letting us know Hoffman's sister got killed by this guy, but what are you telling the people who read your paper? It's so insane.
My toxic trait is that Saw 5 is absolutely my favorite of the movies.
Why? Tell us.
Oh, I actually can really tell you. So
I want to hear it.
It's the opposite of what you were saying. It's not because of the Hoffman Strom stuff. I don't care about that at all in that movie. But I think that the trap of that one, which is the one where everyone is supposed to be collaborating the whole time.
Oh yeah. That's a
I think it's a really clever trap, and I think it speaks really clearly to what John Kramer's kind of intention is as a villain. And I think it also is the one that shows you very clearly that if you are listening and taking notes and taking what he says literally, you can get out. At the very beginning, he says, go against all of your instincts. And they take that to mean this is survival of the fittest. But what he's saying is you need to work together. And it's really clear. And I think one that benefits from rewatching a lot too. Like once you know that they were supposed to have been collaborating, if you didn't already pick up on that because you're better at following instructions than they are.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah,
I love Julie Benz.
I do too.
Yeah.
She's so good at this.
Yeah.
I love that you brought
Yeah.
that up, like following instructions, because I think about that all the time. But then I have to think about if I woke up
Yeah.
and I had gasoline over me, I wouldn't listen to any. And he's unfair that he starts always talking the second people wake up. Whoa, where am I? And then all of a sudden,
You're
there's
like,
a
I
tea in
need
your
coffee.
tub.
I
What did you just say
something.
about a tub? Can we go back?
I like to believe that I'm such a lifelong student perfectionist that I'm like, no, I'm
get
ready.
You get it. You'd be like, okay, I'm in a jigsaw trap. I have to listen. I have to do everything that they say.
I know exactly what to do.
I'm not an audio learner.
No, me neither. That's
Yeah,
fair.
I would do better, I think.
Like,
Yeah.
can you give me just a sheet of paper I can read this on? I want to
Yeah,
make
can I get
notes
a
on
You
the
have a
margin.
transcript,
Yeah.
please.
Nicola, what are your feelings about 4?
I don't, 4 is like not memorable in any way to me. I don't have like really anything to say about that one because I don't even, is that like the one that opens with the pendulum is 5, right? Or is that, yeah. And I love that.
No, I'm sorry. The pendulum with the girl,
Yeah.
that's 3D. That's
Oh no,
That's,
not that pendulum. The one that's
the
like
other
the
pendulum.
Edgar Allan Poe pit in the
Not
pendulum.
that pendulum.
that
Yep.
pendulum.
How often do you get to say
it's
that?
Hoffman's. It's the one. I mean, I think it must be 5 because it is Hoffman's.
Here,
sister.
is what I wrote. Starts with either a broken trap or one that can't be won. That's what
Yeah.
I wrote down. So that's probably it. Yeah.
Yeah, 5. That one can't be won,
Yeah.
which is how you know it's
not him.
him. Yeah.
I think for 4, what impressed me about it was it's the movie or the series is so over with in 3. And then they really lean into, the Jigsaw's dead with the autopsy. And then they continue to thread these supporting characters forward. And I just came out of it going, I can't believe you did that. I can't believe you pulled this forward.
Yeah.
The joke with the old Universal monsters is that they would, wipe the monster out and then they'd be like, okay, and now do a sequel. And you'd be like, fuck, now I gotta bring him back somehow.
Son of, bride of.
Yeah, exactly. And that was just so knocked out by the fact that they brought it forward and they were able to keep this franchise going. I was like, wow, okay, hats off to you. I can't say I love the movie, but I love the audacity of it and what they managed to do with it.
I wrote down ending goes for it, which I appreciate, and yet it's unsatisfying, just as a standalone story. But I agree with you. The boldness to just keep saying, let's keep tying it back. Let's keep trying to make it make sense. And instead of just, Friday the 13th-ing it. It's
Because then I'm just interested even in how they do it for Jigsaw. And I haven't seen Saw 10, but I know Saw 10 is like reviewed the best one yet. And it's kind of what they did with 4, where they're like, okay, he is definitely dead.
Yeah.
But let's do a completely new story with him. They did it more effectively. I don't know. Do they have better askers or anything, or
better askers?
Actors. Did I say askers?
Yes. I was like,
I'm like, I don't actually know what that
means.
Yeah, they do have better. I think I think Aaron disagrees with me, but I think Saw 10 is pretty well done and really well thought out and cast and produced.
I like
really
it
well.
better on a second viewing. I think in the first one, I got a little exhausted by how many times somebody was going to deny, and run out of time. I'm like,
that
they
is
do
frustrating.
that in all 4 traps. I'm just like,
oh
my gosh.
And it does have some of the goofiest moments in it. Yeah. But overall, I think
as you said backstage, like it has the most Tobin Bell. Like I think,
which is all I care about.
Like he really comes front and center. It is very much John Kramer's story. And it does slot in between 1 and 2. And so you get you get to a little bit more of, if everybody loves the relationship between Amanda and John, you get to see more of that relationship developing.
This is where I'm going to put in my plug for anyone who's listening. Someone please make me a supercut or like a chronological edit of the Saw movies. I have long wanted this. I would love to take on this project myself. But
I can't believe it's not out there.
No, I this is something that I want with every fiber of my being. Like
I
all
would
of them
watch the
cut
hell out of that. Yeah.
in chronological order, which is impossible also because things are happening. Like
Right.
it's just all parallel editing,
simultaneous.
but yeah.
I know there's like some kind of
Just watch 4 movies at once.
Yeah.
big like fan project where someone did that with the Fast and Furious movies. And
Yeah.
And so now I'm like, this is my call to you, fans.
Yeah.
Yes.
Seconded.
Please, someone do this for me.
Someone do it. Yeah.
Can I also zoom out from something that Katie said? You said something about like, we're the impulse from like a filmmaking perspective is to make it make sense. And this is what I think is also, when we've thrown around the label torture porn and like people often want to say that it's just like gratuitous, but I think like these movies are coming out in the context of the war on terror. And I think that this like impulse to make it makes sense, like make the kind of atrocity make sense and keep returning to like different origin points or the same origin point has to do a lot with like what's happening politically and like trying to understand the like origins of these atrocities. So I think it's like a really fascinating kind of like meta commentary on that. Maybe
I love that.
Thinking about it a little too hard, but this is my like spiral is not just like the visual signifier, it's like the way the narrative structure works. It all kind of like goes outward from this like, singular point of origin. Really so that's me my big grand scale thoughts.
That's really good because I was just talking to somebody Thursday night where I said I was doing this and they're like, oh, I can't watch those movies because I don't watch torture porn. And I really wanted to push back on the label, but I couldn't because what they don't like is gore. And I was like, well, you can't watch these movies. Sorry. It is more than that, but you still can't watch them because they're still too gross for you.
I'm glad you brought the spiral because I really like the fact that it does become a symbol and it does reflect constantly doing this. And we're constantly going through the same journey time and time again. There's some other kind of iconic pieces throughout, like the Billy puppet, which shows up in the first one and really is not there for any other reason than, let's have a creepy puppet. Just a little stage magic that John Kramer likes to throw in.
That was the visual learning.
You need the Billy puppet. Every time.
I need that.
It would be great if it just had the instructions tattooed all over its face.
And then the pig mask, and the big red cloak. It's kind of like, we don't need that. Like, that's not necessary. It doesn't actually, I don't know that it means anything, but it's a really cool visual and it continues to show up and it's become a hallmark of the series.
It's nice that other people take on the mantle of making these movies, but they still appreciate what came before. And they're like, let's pull this from here. Let's keep these images and iconography going so that it all feels of a piece, even though we're a totally different crew than the people who made the last 3.
And I know Amanda isn't the only one who wears the pig mask, but in my head, I always think of her as Jigsaw.
Oh, wow. I don't know if you've been saving that. I don't know if you've said it before, but that was really good.
I promised you puns.
You are delivering.
I never thought about the pig masks, but now I instantly started. I don't know, something about pigs. So I started to think, is it because he views us as like, they take place in warehouses? They're like butcher shops.
Yep.
Is there like symbolism there?
I mean, again,
we're all just meat. Yeah, maybe.
Could be.
Well, a pound of flesh is
meat,
like such a repeated kind of idea or refrain. Yeah. And we have like, there are a couple, there's at least one like meat locker, there's the pig pit. Like for sure, these abandoned warehouses are also like kind of evocative of slaughterhouses. I think you're onto something.
Yep. Yep.
Definitely no vegetarians.
Well, all vegetarians, because the vegetarians are the only ones who make it through.
Which is why
I'm sorry, I can't cut
off. Another hallmark of the series is Charlie Clouser's score, which I know, Jason, you expressed some discontent about, but I think it is. I'll step out on a limb and I'll say I think it's one of the last great horror themes where you hear it and you're like, I know what that is.
And you're ready.
Like if you play the Victor Crowley theme, I'd be like, I don't know what the hell that is.
Right.
Zepp's theme is so iconic, and it really, I think it does what it means to do with those rising strings as the bass is dropping down. I'm like, it's really effective.
I put it on my after I watched the first one, I put it on my Spotify playlist, and I'm like working, and it came up, and I just froze.
I think that's a great song to work to, because then you're like, it's all about to come together. I'm going to get all the answers now.
And I didn't realize, I mean, Charlie Clouser, unlike, other ones where they've just kind of borrowed the theme and another composer comes in, Charlie Clouser has scored every single Saw movie. He is the one, other than our executive producers, he is the one constant throughout the entire series.
He's the John Williams.
Yeah, of Saw.
Yeah.
That theme is called Hello Zepp, even though that is not what Jigsaw says on the tape. He says, hello, Mr. Hindle. I can't remember his last name.
Let us,
just a bit of
Jason, I know you talked about 6, and we've kind of mentioned that things get pretty thematic as we get into 5 and 6 and 7, addressing various topics. But I know 6 is one of your faves. So would you like to speak to 6?
Sure. But one thing I wanted to point out about 4, one of the things I really like about it, and the reason that it is separate in my brain, is it has these wild transitions between scenes. I watched it with a bunch of people, and they were like, why do you do these like weird CG transitions? Like, they're not CG. They're actually practical transitions.
Yeah.
Which is super interesting. I thought that's sort of where the title in my brain started to kind of turn into a thing like what you saw. It's like this is like a movie now, like this is like fun.
That's very thoughtful.
Yeah.
And very theatrical to have people changing costumes and running to another set to be there on time. I think that's really cool.
Yeah, so I think 4 is pretty fun. But yeah, 6 cracks me up because it's the one where the series just like, all right, fine, now we're topical. Like 6 movies into the series, like we're actually going to speak directly about something, like very plainly. And it's also got the young Jigsaw, which is one of my favorite things. It's just Kramer wearing a backwards baseball cap.
Backwards hat Jigsaw is perfect.
I have 3 notes on Saw 6. Oh, Erickson's back. Great. Dullsville ×3. First trap. Excessive. Appreciate the anti-insurance theme, but that's about it.
Well, okay. So here's my thing with 6, and I can't remember if I've said this already, but the first films are all about how much blood are you willing to shed. And then in 6, it becomes who's going to live and who's going to die. And that feels like a pretty big shift for John Kramer to be like, this far into the series, to be like, no, somebody's going to die here. Like, it's not going to be, you can escape. Like, somebody ain't walking home tonight.
Remembering that when he dies in 3, this has already happened, right? So I'm not making excuses for him, but he is on a journey of figuring this out between his vision and his own desire for revenge, which he then also tries to. It's so convoluted that I can't tell you the timeline for sure. That he's like, oh, maybe I should try to teach Hoffman not to do this or whatever. Like, he is on a journey, and 6 is an earlier part of the journey than the chronological order of the movies makes it seem. So it's tricky, but I agree.
Maybe that's the weighted scale of appreciating your life. Like, addiction is an individual problem. The healthcare system is not.
Yeah, people need to be punished.
People need to die. Like, maybe, I don't know, maybe there is like a little bit of an internal logic there where, like, in fact, he does think that, like, not valuing your life exists along a spectrum with varying levels of punishment.
And at some point, it doesn't matter whether you value your life because you so devalue other people's lives that you simply can't be around anymore.
Exactly.
Yep. You failed your test long ago.
Yes. You had so many
asked
chances.
you to be a human. Yeah. One of the things we talked a little bit, Katie, that, you're not a fan of Scott, what's his name? Scott Patterson.
Patterson.
Yeah, as
I
Strom.
don't have nothing against him as an actor in general, but in these movies, I think he's
Well, the thing is, like, you got the one note and the one note of Costas Mandylor and Scott Patterson,
and then the Erickson one note comes in.
but I feel like they are at least worthy foils for one another in that they are very singular minded.
The characters are, for
Correct. Yes. Yeah. And so, when 5 happens and Strom is done in at the end, I like Strom as a character because that guy like gives himself a tracheotomy. He's not going down.
Yeah.
And so when he is really done at the end of 5, we're left with kind of a vacuum for 6. I don't feel like there is a worthy foil for Hoffman anymore. And I at least enjoyed watching the two of them facing off with one another, saying things without saying things. And we don't really get that in 6.
Yeah.
And I thought there was a good message between like Danny Glover's detective, who was singularly focused on his revenge, but Strom is singularly focused on solving the case.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And you I kind of liked the juxtaposition between how obsession it's all bad. Like any form of obsession is bad.
Unless it's John Kramer's. In which case,
I'm okay with him.
Perfectly fine.
We're on the same page.
His obsession is more of a hobby,
That said, with Agent Strom, I feel like all of 5 is him just going through old files.
It is, and
like
being really mad about it.
Yeah, I wish they'd given him more interesting things to do rather than just bark.
I often daydream about what if 2 other actors were in these roles, what could happen, but fruitless. Yeah. So
I would have very much liked to have seen anybody other than
really
Costas Man. I'm like, how did you what lottery did you win?
Who do you know?
But then again, I feel the same thing about Carrie Elwes. I'm like, I don't know what lottery you won to be so great in Princess Bride and be so consistently terrible in almost
everything else. But he's very charming. And he's very, he's very charismatic. So he's very watchable. I don't find Costas Mandylor watchable. I'm literally like struggling to keep my eyes open while he is on screen because there is just nothing going on.
And the 2, I know they are set up as foils to one another, but like because the performances are so one note, they're practically indistinguishable at times. And I'm like, it's really not working actually if I can't tell if this is Strom or Hoffman for like 30 seconds.
That's right.
I struggle with that consistently. I've seen the 5th movie more than I've seen any of the others because it's my favorite. And I still am like, wait, okay, which one is this? They don't even necessarily like resemble each other that much.
No.
But it's just
It's just a wall of bland.
I could just never get past the fact that he's TV's Luke from the Gilmore Girls. So like that's how I was able to keep them apart. So,
right.
Yeah. Like,
right.
Oh, that's Luke. Now he's like a hard ass cop somehow. Like it didn't work.
No, he's not.
He owns a diner.
If we look at Saw 7, that is the final chapter, Saw 3D. I think it's kind of tackling in a very weird way, in the way that we had the housing crisis, we had the healthcare crisis, and this is kind of that, celebrity, James Fry, Million Little Pieces, made up stuff as memoir, and Jigsaw just ain't having it. But to your point, Nicola, I was kind of like, since when is John Kramer like invested in whether some chick is 2-timing her boyfriends? It's kind of like John Kramer has better things to do, like fix the healthcare system.
Yeah, no, I find that it's on my best traps kind of, but it's like I love it or hate it. It's like both for me because I find it just like so counter to what Saw has been about up until this point. Even also the like public displayness of it is just, like antithetical. Though I do love the idea of it, and like I think I just rewatched that scene this morning because it like sticks with me as just like a real thorn in my side about the whole franchise. But like the Jigsaw monologue says something about like she made them both commit crimes to fulfill her material needs or something, because that's what women are always doing. But that, I guess that's supposed to be why they're in this shop store window, because there was some sort of like material possession component to it. I think it's really interesting. I love how it kind of implicates us as watchers by like making the window be the screen.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it is thinking about the audience in a way that other traps like aren't necessarily, but also like their movies kind of broadly about surveillance, just like on a much smaller scale than that. So maybe it's, I don't know. I'm going to talk myself in circles.
I think that there's something to the fact that they're trying something new moving forward. I don't think it really works and ends up being a little ridiculous. And I'm like, there's 50,000 people standing outside this window. They can't figure out how to break that fucking glass and get in there and help them. But
they don't want to, Katie.
Yeah, they don't want to. They want to watch, right?
Yep.
That's the whole point.
Maybe John Kramer was reading some Reddits about his crime.
That is exactly what I thought. I was like,
okay, this is what people are saying. I'll try this.
This is a rage bait, am I the asshole post. This whole thing. It's like a creative writing assignment to work people up.
With some incel woven in there.
Yeah. Yeah.
He was going on some bad websites that were critiquing his work, and he took it too personally.
Well, and I feel like this
He needs to stay off the internet.
Yeah, he needs to stay off the internet.
Imagining John Kramer on the internet is like a horrifying thought.
Oh, what is this? What is this website here? I'm not sexist enough. Oh, all right.
I'll work on that.
I'll work on that. I know. Okay, that's good. That's good feedback.
Oh, this is the one with the neo-Nazi mousetrap, right?
Yes, this is.
Yep.
Because he is tackling like, instead of tackling misogyny, he's like forwarding it, but he's like, you and your friends are racists. That's like what
I may be a misogynist, but at least
but I draw the line at racism.
That's right. Well, and also this one feels like it kind of in the way we have that public display. Jigsaw is a major part of this social dialogue now. Like they're Jigsaw support groups. I'm like, wait, there not that many people get out of these traps that we've seen. Like that's a very small support group, I imagine, but apparently not. So he's been doing this for quite a while, and it really just kind of like elevates in the same way that, it's been in our minds for 7 years. Therefore, the whole world must know about it as well, which is how I feel about the Michael Myers murders. Like when we talk about the Halloween, it's like, Michael Myers, like, I'm sorry, that happened in the middle of Illinois. Like somebody in New York has probably never heard of Michael Myers, but there you go.
Well, that's a great point, because I feel people would have heard of Jigsaw because of people's fascination with serial killers and like those Michael Myers wasn't creating elaborate games. I mean, the first one, he has a little fun when he puts on that little bed sheet.
He thinks he's hiding.
Yeah.
I wrote, this is a good concept. It's less convoluted and straightforward. I think it's a good entry, but I don't know if it makes sense and I don't know if I care, which is basically how I feel about 4 through 7.
I love whenever a movie is made for 3D and they do those 3D effects, like him throwing the saw at the end of the movie right at the camera.
And at the beginning, the girl's intestines just like splatter out. Yeah. I love a 3D movie where you like, I didn't know the first time I watched it, but immediately within 5 minutes, I was like, oh, this was definitely 3D.
Yeah.
I appreciate that this is the one where the series finally sort of flirted with self-parody, but never, it doesn't really go all in for it, but there are moments in this one that are like real goofy, and like you can tell somebody was like right on the edge of just making this like a flat out like wacky
scary movie.
Yep.
Reined it in.
And then we had to wait a little while until Jigsaw came along. And I don't know what other people's feelings were, but I was like, I really don't want another Saw movie. I'm good. Curious to hear what people's thoughts were when you finally did catch up with Jigsaw, 2017.
They had 7 years to think of something good.
Yeah, we have 2 new screenwriters. We have Josh Stolberg and Pete Goldfinger. And they come in with a new idea.
Did you say Goldfinger? Was that his name?
That's his name, Pete Goldfinger. Would you make him change his name? Is that how this is?
No.
Or are you just really happy that he's got a last name?
Isn't that the Austin Powers Goldfinger? Isn't that
that's Goldmember?
Oh, that's Goldmember.
Goldfinger's James Bond.
James Bond, that's it.
Yeah.
We watched those together, remember?
Hey, they all blend together. Austin Powers, James Bond, Jigsaw.
What are people's thoughts on Jigsaw?
Gilmore Girls.
Jigsaw is one that I really have a hard time like keeping in my brain, and I think it's partially because it's it starts like exactly the same way as 5, where you've got a bunch of people in a trap that are like having to like kind of work together, and that sort of overlap always confuses me, and I always forget which one is which.
I watched this on like Wednesday, and I'm having trouble remembering which one it was. It's the one with a medical examiner. Is the
Yep.
Yeah.
God? I just wrote down, why is this ending so completely unsatisfying? Another boring white guy in a leading role in this. It's just.
Am I right in remembering this one does have more Tobin Bell in it again, though, right?
He has one big scene, basically. Yes. He has one big scene where he talks about it, and that's really it.
And you see him training the yet another apprentice.
Yeah.
I remember finding this one totally solid, but I think I like the collaborative traps are my favorite ones. Right. But I don't find it particularly memorable. I don't have a ton to say about it, but I do. Yeah, we kind of like get a reveal that like John Kramer's there at the end, right? And then he like does kind of a big explanation. I liked that part.
Yeah, he's been doing. I mean, basically, I think this takes place almost like, or at least the part of it takes place almost 10 years before the first one. Which I'm kind of like, John, like you weren't even sick then.
I thought this happened after the car crash, after the diagnosis.
Yeah. Like what? Clearly, this was just something you wanted to do, and now you have something to hang it on. The Spierig brothers directed this one. Watching it again, I was like, this is some of the most like, conventionally pretty people throughout the entire movie. Like even our older detective Halloran is like an AI invented. Okay, we need an older, good-looking cop.
Is that Callum Keith Rennie?
Yes. Yeah.
That's how you know it's filmed in Canada.
Well, actually, I was surprised, but all of them, other than Saw X, I guess, were shot in.
The first one is shot in Los Angeles.
Oh, it's LA. Okay.
Yeah. Then they moved to the cheaper Toronto.
But yeah, it's like everybody is just pretty. Mm-hmm. Matt Passmore as our medical guy, his assistant Eleanor.
Guy, no
everybody's just like, like just these like beautiful people, running about. And I'm like, it feels really boring.
Yeah.
There's nothing interesting to look at. There's not necessarily anything interesting to think about. It doesn't really bring up any new ideas to talk about. It's just kind of like, we need to reboot this series because dang it made money and we need money.
I remember it being, that was the only one I've seen in the theaters, and I remember it being like clean.
Yeah, it is all of that. And I think they were going for something that was a different look. It did away with the color palette. They have a new DP there, but I don't think it's particularly successful as a reboot. It's kind of like, well, here's another Saw movie for those of us who are jonesing for another Saw movie.
And I haven't seen Spiral yet.
I was just going to say, and
I was
then there was
hoping that they did it a little better, like trying to do like a continuation, like a legacy.
It's
like
like
I felt Jigsaw was trying to do a legacy by having it.
They did a different
movie.
Yeah, they did a different rather than a continuation.
It's from the Book of Saw for sure.
Right. Yeah, it's not even Saw, guys. Don't get up in my grill.
It still counts as 9 when we do 10 next year, but it's not really.
But it's not really.
Yeah,
it's not really. But they have the biggest names they've ever had. They have Chris Rock. Huge. They have Samuel Jackson. Max Minghella. That's an interesting one because I'm just like, what were they thinking? Was anybody really going, I would love to see Chris Rock in a Saw movie, because I think if you think of it as that, like Chris Rock in a Saw movie, it delivers. Like
it's a Saw movie and he's in it.
Like that is what it would be like if Chris Rock were in a Saw movie.
I think my complaint with Spiral is just we were so far ahead of the movie at every step, way ahead of you. There is one person in this movie who it could be, and it was. It's not a worthy entry in the franchise. And
it was, I mean, even though it was supposedly not a vanity project, like it's Chris Rock going, hey, I haven't done a police procedural, or I haven't done a dramatic role. This will be an opportunity for me. They had already written, or they were starting to write Saw X, and they had to put that on the shelf so that they could write this new one for Chris Rock.
Is this before or after his turn on Fargo, which I thought was terrific?
I think it's much better than this. That, I think.
Yeah, I think it's before. Yeah.
Maybe this got him the Fargo.
I hope it did, because he was terrific on that. But
and did Chris Rock write this one?
He's executive producing, and he wrote a lot of his own dialogue. He's not given a screenplay credit.
Because I remember when it came out, I kept thinking about how it was around the time like Jordan Peele was a comedian writing horror movies, and who did Halloween?
Oh yeah, the new Halloween.
David Gordon Green.
Danny
Yeah.
McBride cover.
Danny McBride,
Oh.
and then even Alien, wasn't Alien Covenant also like a comedian?
Danny
McBride's
McBride is
one.
in that, but he
Yeah.
doesn't have anything to do with the
Oh, it
making.
doesn't have anything to do with it. And so I thought it was like another like, comedian.
People
just
trying
a
to shift
fan of
gears.
horror.
Yeah.
Well, apparently Chris Rock is a big fan of the Saw movies, and if you got the weight, swing it, and he got to do his Saw movie, but it does feel very much like a sidestep, and like, okay, here's this thing that happened over here, and then let's get back to Saw.
It's really represented in the voice of Jigsaw in this movie,
Oh
which is
my
just an
God.
AI generated voice. And I'm like, well, this says it all, doesn't it? Like, it's just this flat, boring, personality-less voice. You couldn't get any. This was the big idea that it would. Is this supposed to be scary?
Why not just get a sample of John Kramer's voice? I mean, how
they've
hard
done
is
it
this?
before. They've layered it over other people's voices so that you can't quite tell who it is.
Well, I guess I'll say, I said earlier that Saw 3 was my least favorite, but Spiral is my real least favorite. But I also don't, in my mind, it's not a Saw movie. It's from the book of Saw. It's its own thing.
It's Chris Rock.
And I don't have to count it.
You don't. This can just be Saw X. Doesn't have to mean it.
Do you count Friday the 13th Part 5? Do you just take that one out? And
No, I do count that one.
Okay. Just checking.
It's not from the book of Friday.
It kind of is, though. And then Saw X, which came out last year. As we've said, it kind of marks a return to form, and its position in the timeline, such as it is, between 1 and 2. And it sounds like people, for the most part, really enjoyed it.
I think Tobin Bell is the shit, and this movie just proves it. I love it so much because he gets all the screen time. And I this time around watching it, I realized when he realizes he's been duped and he's looking in the mirror at the bandage on his head and he pulls it off, it's the same exact motion as him pulling the exit wound off his head in the first movie. Like, it's a mirror shot of it. And I was like, he cares so much about this character in these movies, and he really makes it. Like, it's his thing, and I feel like this is his Deadpool. This is his reward for all the years he put in and doing little bits and things. He really is so thoughtful and mindful about it. Takes it completely seriously. Wants to give John Kramer his due.
There's an 1.5-hour documentary on the Saw 10 disc, and they talk about how Tobin Bell comes in and basically writes all of his own dialogue. Like, he knows
him better than anybody else.
Exactly. And they trust him, but he'll just go on these riffs and I love the fact, I'm like, yeah, it's like, this is your baby, but he's clearly an intelligent actor.
Mm-hmm.
Everything is very mindfully done. So I have all the respect for him. And it's interesting that he plays with such a small emotional palette throughout the series. He gets to do a little bit more in Saw X, but there's so much nuance within that.
He mines it for all that it is worth. Every little bit of interest and nuance, he really gets in there and digs in and mushes it up. And that's a really cool thing as an actor to watch another actor get to do. But I don't like the villain. She's so irredeemable. When she is she's talking to Margaret, her next mark on the phone, and she's like, "See you soon." She says, "See you soon" twice inexplicably, but she says, "See you soon, see you soon." Then she hangs up and tucks the phone away, and she smiles. There's no one there. There's no audience, and I'm just like, really? You get a lot out of duping cancer patients into thinking they have one less. Like, you really like it. Like, can you just not really like it? Like, it's so.
Do what you love, and you'll never work a day in your life.
He's an irredeemable sociopath. Also, it has Costas Mandelar's most charming moment in the entire 10 movies at the end when he gets to say epic bad luck. Like, I'm like, okay, I like you now. Too bad we'll never see you again.
Yeah, this is the only one that I've seen in theaters, and I was just euphoric. This is like I was in Boston for a wedding and like saw it the morning before my flight, like with my suitcase. But it had to happen. It was opening weekend. It had to happen. I had to be there. Tobin Bell is phenomenal. His performance is so good. I'm glad. It feels like, such a reward for him to like get back into the character and like really just be able to explore the inner world of John Kramer. And of course, the relationship with Amanda, I'm glad, is given its due in the film as well. Although her wig is so
terrible,
atrocious.
the worst in the whole series,
and really just like offensive because like Shawnee Smith was done dirty already by the franchise, and then you're gonna put her in that wig. That seems just like disrespectful. Actually,
she does an amazing job despite it.
She does an amazing job. I loved it. I had the best time watching it. I don't have anything like particularly good or smart to say about it. I love Saw, and it was such a Saw movie, and just like a reward after a couple of unfortunate entries.
Logs.
Yeah, I enjoy this one quite a bit, but the more I thought about it, the worse the optics got.
Yeah.
It's like John Kramer going to Mexico to do what now? So we're like watching it, in the moment. I was like, "Oh, this is like a really good Saw movie." And
you can't
later,
think about
it's
it
like,
that much
now
after.
I'm really uncomfortable. What just happened there?
How about when he says to the little boy, "Let's get you home," and they walk out of the building, and all three of them are covered in blood. I'm like, could you hose them down a little bit before you take him home?
Well, that's the only like child, right? Like that's in
other than Max Magella in
Right,
Spiral when he's a little kid.
Yeah.
And
a Spiral again to me, not
Diana from the first one.
Yeah, I think that adds kind of like an interesting dimension to John Kramer's character. Like he really doesn't want anything bad happen to. Like I think people who haven't lived inside the series, who haven't thought about it very hard, might see him as just like. I think it is John Kramer's like perhaps most redeeming movie too.
Mm-hmm.
Aside from of course the optics of traveling to Mexico and like slaughtering a bunch of people. I did remember having that thought in the theater, and it didn't stick with me long enough to come out during this recording. And that's when I do have it on DVD now, but I haven't rewatched it since I saw it.
Well, now I want the Blu-ray for that documentary.
Yeah, it really is. It's really not. I mean, and again, they talk about how much it was about bringing it back to the Saw universe, giving Tobin a whole bunch to do, letting you kind of more insight into John Kramer, like where he's coming from. What the thing I don't like about it, other than the length, I think it's a bit excessive in terms of it's 2 hours, and I don't know that I needed 2 hours. And where I could have seen some of that trim happen is every single one of these traps has our person like go, no, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do it. And then start to do it, not do it in time, and end up getting eviscerated. It's so repetitious. Like each single trap plays out that same way.
That being said, when you asked for our 5 favorite traps, they're all in this movie for me.
Oh, really? Okay.
Not the actual how the trap plays out,
but just the design of it.
The function and design of the traps are all in this movie because I understand every single one of them. I know exactly what they are supposed to do. I know they're not going to make it when they don't make it. Like
on the documentary, they talk about like dialing everything down to a little, like he has to be able to have access to it in Mexico.
Yeah.
So they can't he doesn't have a handy warehouse, and
he only has what they left behind in their fake lab.
Found objects. Yes, he's a found object artist.
But let's talk traps. I mean, I think we're there. Spill, Katie.
Those are that's all I have to say. I don't watch these movies for the traps or the gore. I watch them only for Jigsaw and what we learn about him and the way he does things. But when I can understand a trap and understand what they have to do and the choice they have to make, then I'm great with the trap. When I'm sort of like spend half the trap figuring out what the fuck is supposed to happen or not, then I'm just like, no,
I can't think of like what my favorite traps were. I think about like ones that stick in my brain, like imagery wise. And I think in Saw 3 in the classroom, does he get pulled apart? The hooks in his skin and he can't escape. I think that's Saw 3. But
Yep.
that might have been because that's one of the first movies I saw. In Saw 7, just the idea of, him putting the hooks in his pec and having to like climb up, that really stuck with me. The intro of Saw 7 stuck with me because I think it was because people were watching. It just kind of heightened that trap for me.
Yeah, I have many favorite traps for many different reasons. So allow me to monologue for a minute.
The floor is yours.
But they mostly like cluster around Saw 2 and Saw 7. But I think Saw 2, The Pit of Needles, in particular, because like behind the scenes, they were actively extracting the needles from syringes, and they kept having to like buy more and more because they didn't realize like how many it would actually take to fill this pit. And so just thinking about all of the labor that went into that trap, which is also like a very upsetting and like one of the more iconic traps. But I just like thinking about all the people and all the time that must have taken, like, I think that's amazing. In terms of the trap that like kind of upsets me the most, even though it's like very simple, also in Saw 2, the razor box nerve gas one where the woman puts her arm like up in to get this antidote for the nerve gas, and then it's blades and she can't get it back out, and then inexplicably puts her other arm in there too once she realizes that the first arm is stuck. But I think thinking about that,
is that not the one where she also doesn't have to do that?
Yes,
but we learn later
that's
that
correct. The key is on the outside. Yeah, there's a different way that she could have done that. But that one I think is like quite upsetting. Just like that one turns my stomach a little bit. Saw 5, as I mentioned, the whole setup is my favorite. The reveal that they could have been going through this all together and it would have been much more manageable. But in the 10 pints of blood trap is when they figure that out. So I will say that is my favorite trap of that movie, because that's when Julie Benz is like, I've put it all together. All of these traps, like 5 people were needed and we could have done this like more easily. So now we each have to give 5 pints of blood when we could have each given 1.
Yeah.
I love that kind of
Darla's redemption.
Yes, I know. I love Darla. I actually, this is a complete aside, but I have a cameo of Julie Benz like doing Darla.
Oh my God.
Yeah. I love her. I love the carousel in Saw 6, the shotgun carousel. I think that one is just like spectacular. And as we discussed,
I don't understand it.
Well, it does kind of break the rules, but it is brilliant. And then I think that's, one more. Chester Bennington, Saw 7, the neo-Nazi. Not because it has anything to do with story. That's why I like 5, is because it has to do with story. But it's just like bananas. Like he has to rip his skin off. There's like it's like a Rube Goldberg more than many of the others are. Though there are several other Rube Goldberg Saw machines. It's Chester Bennington.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That is one thing I do applaud the whole franchise on. Any of those traps that aren't like seeing Jigsaw, you could easily say, oh, it was an apprentice.
Yep. Nice catch-all.
Yeah.
Yeah. Don't understand the point of the shotgun carousel. Probably Amanda's.
There are lots of nice cop-outs built into the way that they've structured it. Like,
there's a whole
like the minute you get mad about it, you're like, oh no, it wasn't that though.
And you can choose your least favorite, Katie. It could always be, oh, that was Hoffman.
It was always Hoffman. All the bad stuff was Hoffman.
Exactly. That guy sucks. Jason.
I made a little list. It's just 5. Just my 5 favorites. In 7, I mentioned earlier, it was sort of flirting with self-parody. And it has a trap that we barely see. That's like a flashback. It's like not in the action of the story. It's when they're in the support group and one of the characters is talking about the trap they were in. And the trap they were in was they were hanging on like a pole with another person with a wall of gnomes, like lawn gnomes behind them. And on the bottom, the floor is completely covered with running lawnmowers. That I laughed so hard in the theater at that. It's just the most ludicrous thing. It's my favorite, and it's like 30 seconds of screen
Because
time.
they don't
but,
have
like,
to explain it.
Yeah, they don't have to. Like, we don't know what these people did. We don't know like where they are or when this happened. But like, just the gnomes and the lawnmowers, just
Fantastic.
Someone did
spectacular.
something terrible in their lawn.
Yeah.
It's like a condo association revenge.
You lived your whole life perfecting your grass. You've missed the forest for the trees.
So I love that one. I always think of that one when I'm thinking about the traps. I love the ice block, the Gallagher ice block. The needle pit is, I think, too, is the one that kind of has the most like relatable ones. The ones that actually are like things that you can imagine, like everyone's been pricked by a needle or like cut on like a piece of metal or something like that. So, but some of the other, like the lawnmower thing, I don't know what that's like. I've never been hanging over a floor of lawnmowers.
You haven't lived, man. Come on over.
Yeah, I know.
We'll do, that's what we're doing on Saturday.
In 10, there is a trap that's like sucking the bone marrow out of the person, and
Yeah,
that is like the one trap in the entire series that like I kind of started to like gag a little bit because of, I mean, it's like got that, it's like the bone marrow is dumping into a thing and it's all this red and this like white. It's like, oh my god, like I was really shocked at how inventively gross that one was. And my favorite of the entire series is the hog slopper from 3.
That's a good one.
Because there's just, I got so many questions.
It's so gross.
How many people did he hire to like hang those things up? How long have they been in there? Like, love it.
Hoffman.
It's so ridiculous.
Well, and they just purify. So clearly they've been just hanging there for a while, just waiting to just drop in. They're just bags of guts at that point, and they just get splattered. Don't actually have any that haven't been mentioned yet, because I love the ice block, because that was such a satisfying conclusion, not just to that character, but to that movie. I was like, wow, like that took some doing.
He wasn't going to come back because he had scheduling conflicts, and then things worked out, and they were like, okay, yeah, let's put him in. And I'm like, that's how you let them kill you?
Well, and also I'm kind of like, are these like up in little freezers, like to maintain being? It's like, because they can't melt because we need them. I'm like, man.
Well, you don't know how big they were before.
That's true. Actually, it started out being, it was going to smash his whole body, and he's got his head by the time.
The building down.
But yes, I do say that, like, I like the stories and I like the ideas and the traps. It feels like it's a really well thought out menu of items to put into a movie and then later a franchise. Is that they all too feed into each other, and I think that's what makes Saw special. Any final thoughts on the franchise in general?
I feel like it's done, but I would take more.
I just love them. I always want to see more Saw movies. I yes, you can't give me enough. Even if I hate it, I love it.
Yeah.
I love that they haven't rebooted it. They haven't like tried to reboot. It's all connected. I do appreciate that.
When we were talking earlier about the little kid in Saw 10, that reminded me of something like when we were watching the movie later, I was like, where do children come from in the Saw universe? Because there's like no sex at all, like in any of these movies.
That's true.
Like, we don't know where babies come from. It's weird that like the series is so long and it's so completely sexless. Like, even in the first movie, I think it's like the closest we get is like Cary Elwes is having the affair with his
he just comes there to yell at her.
But like, yeah, they just like hang out, and that it made me think of Barbie when Ken's like, I thought I'd stay over, and his mistress is like, why? And he's like, I'm actually not sure.
Yeah.
This is a great time for me to bring the Saw musical up again, because there is sex in the Saw musical.
Really?
It's like a queer love story between Adam and Dr. Gordon.
Oh, nice.
Drawing out the homoerotic implications that are there already and that fans have already been fixated on, but it's, yes, they're in love.
That's a great point, though, Jason. Like, I've never thought of that before. Is it the only franchise?
Yeah, there's no nudity. There's no, yeah.
There is the implication of sex with the
right.
Saw 7 misogyny.
Yep. And clearly these children came from somewhere. So sex occurred.
But always at least 8 or 9 years ago.
But over there, exactly. Not where we have to watch it. Wow. Thank you all so much. And thank you for doing your homework. I did this in 2020 because that was the anniversary of the final chapter. And that was the last time I'd been through them. And I was like, oh, man, I don't know if I want to sit through. Now there's extra movies. There's 2 more. But it was a great ride. And I love this franchise. And it was great fun chatting with all of you about it. And until next time, keep searching, keep exploring, and keep sharing the scare.